In this tutorial, I'll be walking you through how I created this isometric bedroom in Blender. This is a fantastic project for beginners who are just getting into 3D modeling because we don't do anything particularly complicated, and it allows you to practice a lot of the basics, building up familiarity with Blender through repetition. We'll practice things like scaling, extruding, insetting, loop cuts, and working with a few modifiers. While we don't do anything complex, simple things done well can still yield great results. The tutorial is targeted towards beginners, so I go slow and show the entire process, but I'll speed up the parts where not much is happening and I'm just making minor adjustments. If you don't need all the explanations and just want to see how things are done, you might want to increase the playback speed and/or jump around with the timestamps in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Let's dive right into it. Let's start by hitting Shift A to add a cube. Hit S, then 4 on your keyboard to scale it up by 4. We'll also move it up by hitting G, Z, and 4 to move it up the Z-axis 4 units so it's even with the ground. With the cube selected, tab over to Edit Mode, hit 3 to go to Face Select, and select these 3 faces. Hit X to bring up the Delete menu and delete the faces. Press A to select everything, then Alt and E to bring up the Extrude menu and choose Extrude Faces along Normals. Extrude inwards and press S to toggle even offset so the faces come out evenly. We now have the walls of our room. Next, we'll set up our isometric camera so we can switch views as we're modeling to get a better understanding of what things will look like in the final render. Hit Shift A and add a camera. With the camera selected, hit N to bring up the side menu, go to Item, and copy these settings. When you're done there, go to the Object's Data Properties panel and change the camera's type and scale as well. Hitting 0 on the number pad allows you to quickly switch to and from the camera's view. I'll also go to the Output Properties and change the resolution so I have a square aspect ratio. If you prefer something other than a square, feel free to play around with the camera's scale and location so your room is in frame properly. Now let's create our wooden floor panels. In Edit Mode, select the top face of the ground and hit Shift D to duplicate it and right-click to leave it in place. With the face still selected, hit P and separate by selection. Tab to Object Mode, select the duplicated plane, and go back to Edit. I'll hit / to isolate it to make things easier to see. Hit Ctrl R to create loop cuts and scroll up on the mouse wheel until you have 7 segments. Left-click once to confirm the segments, then right-click to set them in place. Switch to Face Select and select everything but the left 2 panels and delete them. Hit Ctrl R again and create 3 loop cuts this time. Then hit 2 on the number row to go to Edge Select and select the alternating edges. Hit X to bring up the Delete menu and dissolve the edges. Hit A to select everything, then go to Mesh, Split, Faces by Edges. Hit P and this time we'll separate by loose parts. Go back to Object Mode and grab individual segments to confirm they separated properly. Then select everything and hit Ctrl J to join them so we're only working with one object that has 5 parts instead of 5 individual objects. Go to Edit Mode and add an array modifier. Remove the X offset, change Y to 1, and increase the count to 4. Select everything and press E to extrude and give your floor panels some height. Add a bevel modifier to visually separate the panels from each other. I don't like how big the gaps are, so I decrease the bevel amount. I also increase the segments by 1 so the bevel isn't as blocky. I'm going to shade the floor smooth, so I also turn on hardened normals to help with any shading issues. This won't do anything until we go back to Object Mode, right-click the floor, and choose Shade Smooth. Then head to the Object Data Properties panel, turn on Auto Smooth, and crank the degrees up to 180. To make the trim, select the 2 inner faces of the walls in Edit Mode, hit Shift D to duplicate, and right-click to leave them in place. Then, press P and separate by selection. Select the new faces in Object Mode, and in Edit Mode, switch the Edge Select by hitting 2 on the number row. Select the top 2 edges, hit G to grab, Z to lock your movement to the Z-axis, and bring the tops down. Switch to Face Select and hit A to select everything. Then press Alt-E and extrude faces along normals to give the trim some depth. Don't forget to press S to toggle even offset. When you're happy with how that looks, hit A again to select all the new geometry. Set the snapping to face and either turn on snapping by clicking the magnet icon next to the options, hitting Shift-Tab as the keyboard shortcut, or holding down Control as you move the object. I prefer to use Control so I don't accidentally leave snapping on when I don't mean to. Grab the trim, press Z to lock the movement to the Z-axis, and snap the trim to the floor panels by placing your cursor on them. With the trim in place, go back to Edge Select and select these top two edges. Hit Ctrl B to add a bevel, scroll up on the mouse wheel to increase the number of segments to 5, and size the bevel so it goes all the way to the wall. We're not using a bevel modifier here because I only want to bevel this one corner, whereas the modifier would bevel all of them. Then we'll head back to Object Mode, shade it smooth, and turn on Auto Smooth. For the bed, we'll start by making the frame. Add a cube, and in Edit mode with Face Select on, grab and move the faces around until you have a large rectangular shape. To make things easier on myself, I lock my movement to the X, Y, or Z axis by hitting the corresponding key after grabbing a face so I don't end up with a lopsided shape. Unfortunately, my screencast keys don't show what buttons I'm pressing while I'm in the middle of a transformation, but you can see the axis light up when I'm locked to it. I also like using number pad keys 1, 3, and 7 to quickly switch to the front, side, and top views as I'm modeling, as it makes it easier for my brain to comprehend what's going on without perspective getting in the way. I don't do it right now, but you can also use 0 on the number pad to switch to the camera view so you can get a better idea of what your objects will look like in the final scene. Once you have the basic shape down, we can add a bevel modifier. Instead of adding it from scratch, we can copy existing modifiers and their settings from other objects. This can be useful for setting up multiple modifiers quickly instead of having to add them one at a time. To do this, select all the objects you want to receive the modifier in Object Mode. In this case, we'll select the bed frame. Then, select the object that has the modifier you want to copy last so that it's the active object indicated by the yellow outline. In this case, that's our floor panels. If you're running Blender 2.9 or above, you can go to the Modifiers tab, click the arrow to open up the drop-down menu, and choose Copy to Selected. If you're running an older version of Blender, I believe you can hit Ctrl L to bring up the Links menu to link the modifiers there instead. With the modifier added, I'll shade it smooth, turn on Auto Smooth, and increase the degrees to 180. I'll also increase the bevel amount so the curve is more prominent. Then right-click the frame and set the origin to geometry. To make the frame's legs, we'll add another cube and scale it down to size. I use the snapping function by holding down Control while grabbing the cube to make it sit right on top of the floor. To align the leg to the frame, I go to Top View with numpad 7, turn on X-ray mode with Alt-Z, hit G to grab, and Shift-Z to exclude the Z-axis from my movement since I just leveled the leg with the floor. We can make the leg extend all the way to the frame by grabbing the top face, locking to the Z-axis, and snapping to the bottom of the bed frame so we have the perfect height. To give the leg more detail, I'm going to add a flared base. Hit Ctrl R to create a loop cut, left click once to confirm that you only want one segment, move the cut about a quarter of the way down, then left click again to place it. In Face Select mode, hold down Alt and left click the vertical edge to quickly select all the faces in the loop, or manually select the 4 faces we just made, and extrude faces along normals to create the base. I'll also copy the bevel modifier from the bed frame and turn on Auto Smooth. The corners of the base look like it would be very painful to smash your pinky toe against, so I'm going to round them out a bit by adding another bevel. Select the 4 edges and hit Ctrl B to create a bevel. When you're done with the leg, we can add a mirror modifier to duplicate it to the other corners. Select the bed frame as the mirror object and mirror on both the X and Y axis. If the legs aren't mirroring properly, make sure the origin of the bed frame is set correctly, as that's what the mirror modifier works off of. Don't be afraid to go back and make adjustments as you see fit, by the way. I added the legs and I decided the frame looked a bit thick, so I went and squashed it down more. I left all the fine tuning I did in here so you can see how I went about making the corrections. To make the headboard, we'll start by duplicating the bed frame in object mode so that it's a separate object. If you duplicate it in edit mode, you'll have to hit P and separate it out. I'll move it up the Z-axis, squash it down, and snap it back to the bed frame along the Z-axis. Add 7 loop cuts and bring up the height. Hit 1 on the number row to go to vertex select mode. In the side view, I'll turn on X-ray mode with Alt-Z and proportional editing with O. Then I'll grab the top middle vertices and drag them up. Use the scroll wheel to adjust the influence of the proportional edit. If the bottom vertices get messed up in the process, turn off proportional editing, select them all, and hit SZ0 to flatten them back out. Use the snapping function to line it back up with the bed frame. Add 2 levels of subdivision to smooth out the curves we created. You can hit Ctrl 2 as a shortcut to add the modifier. Once again, we'll set the origin to geometry. I'll decorate the headboard by adding a sphere, shading it smooth, and scaling it down. Use the front, side, and top views to help you line everything up. Once it's in place, add a mirror modifier with the headboard as the mirror object. To make the mattress, we'll duplicate the bed frame again, scale it down, and snap it on top. I'll increase the bevel modifier amount and add a bevel to the corners to give it a softer look and make it more visually distinct so it doesn't seem like we're sleeping on a concrete slab. As you might have guessed, we're going to be duplicating the mattress to make the blanket. In edit mode, select the outside faces, duplicate with Shift D, and right click to leave it in place. With it still selected, hit P and separate by selection. I'll select it in object mode so we can edit it and isolate it with / to make things easier to see. Using vertex select, grab these extra vertices that are creating curves we don't want and dissolve them. Now we can pull the top down a bit to create some room for the pillows. For this next part, don't follow along with me just yet. The bevels we added to the corners of the mattress are going to cause some shading and geometry issues, and I don't realize that until later on. I decided not to edit this out in case you ever run into a similar problem yourself, so you have an idea of how to fix it. Trying to add a bevel perpendicular to an already beveled edge that doesn't have enough segments is making it sharp, and the new geometry being created causes this line to run across the top. This is due to bad topology, which is something I'll probably explain in a future video. For now, I'll undo everything I just did with Ctrl Z so I'm right where we left off when I prompted you to stop following along. Here's how we fix this. Select and dissolve the extra edges created by beveling earlier. From here, make the blanket big and comfy by extruding all the faces along normals. Don't forget to hit S to toggle even offset. Now we can select the top, bottom, and corner edges to create extra bevels without issue. If you want to adjust the size of the extrusion afterwards like I did, you can isolate the blanket and select all the outer faces. Then hit Alt-S, which allows you to scale along normals. For the pillows, I use a smooth shaded icosphere. Add 2 levels of subdivision to help round it out. Turn on X-ray mode and use the side and top views to squash in the top and side vertices until you have a semi-oval shape. I like to drag a box to select the vertices to make sure I'm grabbing the points on both sides of the shape, which is why we have X-ray mode on. From here, we can scale out the corners, excluding the Z-axis, to make it look more pillow-like. After that, it's just fine-tuning. Move vertices around until you end up with something you're happy with. Feel free to copy what I do, or give it a shot yourself and see what you come up with. When you're done with the pillow, snap it onto the mattress and add a mirror modifier along the Y-axis with the mattress as the object. To make the window, I'm going to add a cube, scale it up, and move it into place. I'll leave part of the cube sticking out to form a windowsill. Once the cube is in position, duplicate it and leave it in place. This extra cube is what we'll use with the Boolean modifier to cut a hole in the wall. Add a difference Boolean modifier to the room, select one of the cubes as the object, then hide that cube. Make sure you click the camera icon next to it to hide it from the render as well. We now have a hole in the wall that we can recess our window into without having to worry about overlapping geometry. If you decide to scale or move your window object around afterwards, make sure you apply the same transformations to the window Boolean object as well, otherwise the cutout won't line up. Let's form the windowsill by selecting this face and pressing I to inset. Then press E to extrude and bring the face backwards. We'll make this window have 4 panes by adding a vertical and horizontal loop cut with Ctrl R. Select the 4 interior faces and press I to inset. Hit I again while insetting to toggle individual faces to inset the 4 panels separately. Once again, hit E to extrude and bring the faces back. I like how far the window extrudes from the wall, but I don't like how deep the windowsill is, so I'm going to bring everything forward a bit. Instead of selecting everything I want to move by hand, I'm going to hit Ctrl+ on the number pad twice with the window pane still selected. This expands my selection, which I'll move along the y-axis. As with everything else, I'll shade it smooth and copy the bevel modifier from the bed frame. The edges seem a little too rounded, so I'm going to cut the bevel amount in half for a sharper look. Lastly, I'm going to grab the back faces of the window and snap them flush with the wall. I don't want them casting any shadows in the background when I set up my lights later. Guess what we're going to use to model the wardrobe? Another cube. Scale it up, snap it to the floor, and move it into position. Then grab the faces around in edit mode to get the basic shape down. Make it a little bit thinner than you want it to be because we're going to extrude outwards later, adding to the width, and there isn't very much walking space as it is. We're apparently modeling a tiny one-bedroom apartment in New York. When you're ready to start adding detail to the wardrobe, make 4 loop cuts. The first one I add at the base will form the bottom of the drawer. The next one will form the top. The one above that will be for a gap between the drawer and the doors. And the last one would be for the top of the doors. Next, make a single loop cut running vertically down the middle. Then make a very thin 2-segment bevel from it. They will be for the center divide on the doors to help visually separate one from the other. For this next part, I suggest going into isolation mode with / if you haven't already, so there's less visual clutter. Select all the faces for the door and the drawer, hop over to side view, press E to extrude, and make a very small extrusion. This will make a gap so the doors don't sit flush with the rest of the wardrobe. Extrude the faces again, thicker this time, for the doors and the drawer itself. Add a loop cut to both the top and bottom tiny extrusions. You might have to zoom in real close to place it properly. Then select both and change your transform pivot point to individual origins. It's set to median by default. Then scale inwards to form the gaps. If you don't change the pivot point, the loops will scale towards each other rather than inwards independently. Select all the drawer faces and press I to inset. Hit I again to toggle off individual faces. We'll do the same thing with the doors. Select the inset faces, go to side view, and extrude them back. It helps to turn on X-ray mode to make sure you don't extrude past the gap we made. To form the gap between the doors, go to Vertex Select mode. We're going to merge away the middle vertices, and there's 2 ways to do this. I'll show you both. The first way is to use Auto Merge. Click this button up here to toggle it, and any 2 vertices that end up on top of each other will become one. Select the middle vertex, double tap G to edge slide, and bring it backwards. You'll see that it's merged with the other vertex that it came in contact with. I don't really like this method, as sometimes I forget I have auto merge toggled and I unintentionally end up merging stuff. The other way is to use the merge function. I'll select the middle vertex at the bottom this time and edge slide it back. Then I'll hit A to select everything, M to bring up the merge menu, and choose by distance. At the bottom, you'll see the number of vertices it removed. This is useful for getting rid of doubled up geometry that you created, which usually happens when you extrude and right click, setting the extrusion in place. Anyway, I'll shade it smooth, turn on auto smooth, and copy the bevel modifier from the window. Then I'll set the origin to geometry. To make the handles, I'll duplicate the sphere we made for the headboard. Scale it down slightly, move it into place, and set the wardrobe as the mirror object. Duplicate it again and remove the mirror modifier for the drawer handle. We have a lot of rectangular shapes in our scene right now, so for the nightstand, I'll use a cylinder. Scale it down and position it with the front, side, and top views. Once it's in place, set the origin to geometry. In edit mode, go to side view and select 8 of the faces to make a drawer. Inset the faces, extrude it backwards, inset again very slightly, and extrude the faces back out. Then shade it smooth and copy the bevel modifier from the bed frame. Add another cylinder and scale it down to make a leg. Snap the top and bottom faces to the underside of the nightstand and to the ground to make it the perfect height. I'll copy the bevel modifier from the nightstand and turn up the bevel amount to make it look smoother. Then add a mirror modifier across the X and Y axis with the nightstand as the mirror object. Duplicate one of the many spheres we have to make the drawer handle. To make the lamp, I'll select the nightstand, hit Shift S, and move the cursor to selected. Now when I add a cube, it'll be perfectly centered on the nightstand, so all I have to do is scale it down and snap it along the Z-axis. To shape the lamp, I added 6 loop cuts, turned on X-ray mode, and scaled out one of the edges with proportional edit. From there, I manipulated individual edges until I ended up with the shape I liked. I shaded it smooth and copied the bevel modifier from the nightstand legs. I also added 2 levels of subdivision for that extra smooth look. Add another cylinder to make the lampshade. Before I do anything else, I'll cut the number of vertices in half from 32 to 16. This menu disappears when you perform another action and there's no way to get it back. Scale into top face and flare out the bottom. Then select every other edge and scale it inwards, excluding the Z-axis with Shift-Z to give it that classic lampshade look. Make sure you set the pivot point back to median point first though, if you haven't already. Afterwards, I'll shade it smooth and copy the bed frame bevel. Then I'll delete the top and bottom faces to make a hole and extrude along normals to give it some thickness. Since you can't see below the shade, I cheated a little bit by not connecting the lampshade to the base, so it's just magically hovering in the air, but that'll be our little secret. Once again, we'll take advantage of the mirror modifier to make it look like we did more work than we really did. Mirror the stand and the lamp across the y-axis with the bed frame as the object. Let's add a little room decoration to help finish off the scene. Add a 6-sided cylinder and press R, Y, 90 to rotate it 90 degrees. Scale it down and make it fairly thin. Then add 2 array modifiers, one to duplicate the hexagon horizontally and one going vertically. I went 6 across and 3 up. Adjust the X and Y factors until you get some spacing you like. If you hold down Shift while dragging the numbers, it'll allow you to change across smaller increments. Once you're happy with how it looks, apply the array modifiers. If you think you might want to come back and tweak the modifiers later, make a duplicate copy of it as a backup first, since applying the modifiers are a permanent action. I don't want every hexagon, so I'm going to select the face of a few of them and press Ctrl L to expand my selection to all the linked parts. This allows me to select the entire hexagon tile without having to painstakingly select each face. Then I'll delete them. Snap it to the wall, shade it smooth, copy the bed frame's bevel modifier, and we're done modeling the room. Hit Shift S and send your cursor back to the world origin. Add a plane and hit S20 to scale it up 20 times to make a backdrop. Before I get to shading, I'm going to quickly check the face orientations. Every face has a front and back side, and having something face the wrong way can cause unexpected issues. It probably won't matter for this specific project, but since we did so much deleting and extruding, it's good practice to check this. Enable face orientation in the viewport overlays, and if anything comes up red, it means you're seeing the back face. Since there are multiple things to fix, I'm going to hit A to select everything and tab over to edit mode. I'll hit A again to select everything again and recalculate my normals to face outside. Everything's blue now, so we're good to go. I'll head over to the Shading tab, and before I start creating materials, I'm going to adjust some render settings. I plan on rendering the final image in cycles, but I'll do most of the work in Eevee since it renders faster. Turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections to get a closer approximation of what it would look like in cycles. I'll have a list that shows all the color and shader settings that I used, so you don't have to constantly pause the video to match my color palette if you want to follow along. Before I put that up on screen, I want to show how I made the materials for a couple of these things that have their own unique settings. I'll start with the window by adding a material, changing the base color, and turning down the roughness so it reflects a little more like paint would. Then I'll head over to edit mode and select the 4 window panes. Head over to the materials tab in the sidebar, add a new slot and material to the object, rename it window pane, and assign it to these 4 faces. I'll get rid of the default shader and add an emission shader instead. This will be the primary light source for our scene. I'll turn up the strength to 90, which will look fine in cycles, but it'll be blown out in Eevee. If you don't want to deal with the glare, you can temporarily turn down the strength or turn off the bloom while you work. For the wall art, I'll go back to object mode and select the hexagons. Add a new material, turn the metallic up to 1, and lower the roughness to 0.2. This will give a reflective, matte finished look. Then in edit mode, I'll select a few faces that I want to be a different color and expand my selection with Ctrl L to select the entire tile. Add a new material in the material tab and assign it to your selected tiles. Give it a different color, turn up the metallic, and turn down the roughness. To give the ground a shiny wax floor look, I turn up the clear coat and turn down the roughness a bit. The lower the roughness, the more reflective the floor will be. Note that the reflection looks different in Eevee than it does in Cycles, so keep that in mind if you decide to play around with the number. Anyway, for your convenience, here are all my material settings. Once you're done creating your materials, you should have something that looks like this, so it's time to add some lights. I'll switch over to Cycles and limit my render region so I'm not constantly watching the backdrop render every time I make a change. I want the window to be the main source of light in the scene, so it should be bright enough to determine the direction of most of the shadows. With that in mind, I'll add 3 area lights on the open areas of the room where the missing walls and ceiling would be to help fill in the underexposed spots. The larger you make the lights and the further back you place them, the more diffused the lighting will be. I'm looking at the edges of the shadows to guide my lighting. I want to soften up the shadows, but I don't want them to disappear completely. You can press Shift-T if you want to control where your light points. Before I render, I'll head over to the Compositing tab, enable Use Nodes and Denoising Data, and add a Denoise node. As the name implies, this will help get rid of the noise in our final render. And there you have it. This ended up being quite a long video, but hopefully you stuck with it all the way through and now have a cute little isometric bedroom to your name. If you decide to post your render to Instagram or Twitter, tag me in it because I'd love to see your work. Links to my socials are in the description.